welcome to the Homeschool Mama Coffee Chat. So it's a little bit late in the day for me. I've got a bubbly instead, and I think they call it Merry Bubbly. Apparently Christmas is around the corner. Not to remind you or worry you, but there's things going on in this month, and it's called Marketing Water now. Today I get to introduce you to Emily Bailey. She's a homeschool mom of 5. She's a chicken keeper, me too, and a certified life coach, me too. She meets women at the intersection of motherhood, homeschooling, neurodivergence, and creative pursuits. And it is a pleasure to chat with her about ADHD, how that might be affecting our homeschools, and how we can incorporate what we know about ourselves, self-awareness, and actually make the homeschool life and the mom life and all the things work for us. So it's a pleasure to have you here. Hey, and if I haven't introduced myself, I'm Teresa over at the Homeschool Mama Self-Care Account, a graduated homeschool mom of 4 kids. Hey, nice to see you.
Hi.
Nice to
Thanks for your
officially meet you.
patience while I figure out tech. It's going to be the death of me. I just know it.
This is the thing I introduce most people to. I think I'm going to have to too, otherwise you won't see all of my head. Yes, I have been doing this for a while, a coffee chat on Tuesday afternoons, get to know people, because it seems like we're all here together, and it feels like we're kind of related in a way. If I know someone, you probably know someone. And actually I do, because I learned you're an Enneagram Type 4 from somebody that's following me. Is that right?
I am.
I have proved my point.
I love it. Well, it's so nice to meet you. Thanks for having me here.
Yeah, delighted to have you here. So tell me, what brought you to homeschooling in the first place?
Oh, a gut feeling, my neurodivergence,
Uh-oh, what happened? Can you see me or hear me? I'm curious. If that's on my side or if that's on Emily's side. Hey, you're back.
Hey.
Great.
I don't know what happened. I was
Me
in the middle of
neither.
a sentence and it cut me off. It's like it has ADHD and it wanted to interrupt me or something.
Story of my life. Before I jumped onto all this techie stuff in the last 4 years, I would have lost my mind if those sorts of things happen. And now it happens all the time. So I'm like, okay, just breathe.
Just go with it.
Go with
Okay.
it. So tell me about your homeschool. Yeah, you said it was a gut feeling.
I said it was a gut feeling. I think in large part because of my undiagnosed neurodivergence and my child's undiagnosed neurodivergence. And I think a lot of people make their way to homeschooling when they're at the beginning and the middle of their neurodivergent journey and diagnoses, because it's like square peg round hole, like yeah. I didn't intend to homeschool. I didn't grow up thinking I'm going to homeschool my kids.
Yeah.
I just knew that when my child was, kindergarten age and everybody was enrolling their kids, I didn't want to. Yeah. And it surprised me. So I had to do a lot of deconstruction of what did I think about school and education, and why did I feel so strongly that my child wouldn't thrive in a school setting.
Yeah.
I didn't know. So it was definitely a journey of discovery, and it took several years before I would discover his neurodivergence and then also my own. So
yeah. And that's your first. And how old is your first then?
Yeah, so he's 14 now.
14. Oh, fun. My youngest just turned 15. That is so weird, so wild, but that is a fun age.
Well, I want you to tell me my future. I have 5 kids. They're from age 4 up to 14, and here you are. This is what I love about the homeschooling community, is that you can find someone that's a couple of steps ahead of you and kind of, okay, I think I can survive this next phase.
Yeah, no, I can't predict your future because I know this is the same approach I have with coaching, is that I haven't got an investment in how you're homeschooling. I have heard it all, but I don't have an investment. And who your kids are aren't mine, and who I am isn't you. But let's work together to help you get out of your own way to do this thing in a way that feels satisfying. And so tell me that, you also went into the homeschool coaching realm. You're working with Wild and Free. That wasn't even a question I had until I was reminded when I'm looking at your account. How did that all happen?
Oh, well, I'm just a member of Wild and Free. I'm not working officially for them. I think a lot of homeschool moms put Wild and Free in their bio.
Okay.
I should probably take that out if people are thinking.
No,
Maybe that's why I have so many folders.
yeah, no, it's all right.
It's not in an official capacity.
Yeah.
I just put that in there years ago when I was like, yeah, I'm a Wild and Free homeschool mom. And, as it started as a community, and, actually finding Wild and Free, little plug for them.
Yeah.
When I found them, I started homeschooling before
Yeah.
Wild and Free, right? And I thought I was doing everything wrong, even though I knew I was doing it right, because we set up a nature table. We were doing a lot of child-led learning. We were incorporating life skills and art and collaboration and story and song and all these things. And it was very much like I was letting my child lead, and I was sort of planning from behind, right, is the phrase that we use now. But I didn't have that language. I just thought I was cheating. I thought I was doing it wrong because I couldn't plan my homeschool day in advance. I could only plan it after we had lived it. And then I could write about it and be like, oh, well, I guess this is what we did today. And I could, over time, look at patterns and see, wow, we are doing this and this and this. But it looked so unconventional. It looked nothing like school or what I thought a homeschool should look like, even though I had virtually, I had like 2 examples to go off of. And so years later, when I found Wild and Free, I thought, it's not just me that has these values and is living in this way and sees homeschooling as a beautiful, enchanted childhood extension, time, and that could be a healthy, developmentally appropriate way to raise and educate children. And so I'm very, very grateful when I found them. Mm-hmm. And I do think that there are a lot of people in the Wild and Free community, as well as, just in the larger homeschool community, that do have neurodivergence somewhere in their family, because if the system is working for you, then you don't really have cause to question it.
Right.
But I just had this feeling from the get-go that my child's strengths would be ignored and his weaknesses might be amplified in that setting. And I also had this secret, I was afraid I was going to be a really bad public school mom. I can't get out the door on time. I can't remember my child's homework. I could, that whole layer of, undiagnosed ADHD
or just
my homeschooling
mom.
My homeschooling prepared for me.
The things you're speaking to, I am not ADHD, at least as far as I know, but I mean, at certain points I did look like I have tendencies, but I don't think I do. In fact, after this, in my Facebook group, I'm doing a time management discussion or class. It's because I've learned all sorts of things, but anyways, I'll leave that for that group. I haven't got ADHD. I think my oldest daughter does. Did not know that when we were homeschooling until she was in her first year university. But I do know that getting out of the house in the morning is next to impossible for every homeschool mom that's been doing this for at least 2 years. And the idea of morning, getting out in the morning, is before lunchtime. And that was really tricky because I did have my kids in school. So trying to do that was too much. It was too much. But of course, there was also the other end of the day, picking up the kiddos. And I had a baby at the time where I'm trying to wake my baby up to go pick up the kids at school. This also untenable. Yeah.
Yeah. And this brings up a really good point that I coach to a lot.
Yeah.
People want to know if they're homeschooling for the right reason, for a good enough reason. And it's you can homeschool for any reason you want. You can homeschool just to preserve sleep.
Yeah.
For your family.
Yeah.
That's health. That's health 101 is get enough sleep. And our society is not set up for it.
You know
what I mean?
Yeah. When you say that about the right reason, then immediately I go to because I've been watching that John Oliver bit over the last day or two, and I'm writing notes trying to figure out if I actually care enough to talk about it, because I don't really care what everybody thinks about homeschooling. And there is a meme that I put up in my stories that accurately reflects how I feel about people misinterpreting it. I think they don't know, so they don't really know what to say about it. And ultimately, they probably care about our kids, and they just think that we haven't quite figured out how we could manage our kids by ourselves without a government influencing that. But now I'm totally going on a rant. I'll just stop. Your reason is the right reason. That's what I would say.
Yeah, because it's yours. If you like your reason, then it's the right reason.
Yeah.
Like, I don't care what your reason is. I just care that you like it and that it's compelling enough for you to show up day in and day out, even on the hard days, which, let's be honest, especially with ADHD, you got more hard days than easy days, whether you're homeschooling or public schooling or whatever you're doing.
Okay, let's talk about that. So first of all, how did you know you had ADHD? Or what made you think, oh, I probably,
Yeah. Well, I think it was when I hit rock bottom as a mom. And as a homeschooler, I have, like I said, I have 5 kids, but I had 4 kids at the time.
Yeah.
I had a newborn, my oldest was like second, third grade-ish, whatever. And there's this scene in my mind of what, like, the moment that I hit rock bottom. I was trying to teach my oldest math, and he hated math, right? Where you laugh, everybody was like, oh,
sorry, you keep painting the picture, and I'm like, this is my picture. But go ahead.
Yeah, I was trying to teach my oldest math, right? My second oldest child, who, was like the easygoing, carefree kid, and he's like wearing a pull-up that needs to be changed, and he's sitting on the dining room table eating fishy crackers, and, the house is a mess. My toddler, who is like taking books off the shelf and ripping them in half and throwing the pages like confetti. I'm trying to breastfeed my baby, right? And I'm fighting with my oldest about math, and then my husband walks in the door and sees this whole thing laid out, and he's like, okay, let's go tour some schools. And I'm like, you're gonna have to rip homeschooling out of my cold dead fingers. And he tried to, and it was not pretty, but that was the moment. And we got in an argument. We don't have a ton of arguments, but we had an argument, and I was so intent on not failing and proving to myself and proving to my husband and proving to everybody that I could homeschool and educate my child better than the system. Because if I failed, if I couldn't do it better than they could, then that meant I had to send my kid there. And everything inside of me told me, don't send him. And I didn't know why. I didn't have the language. And so in that moment, my husband's like, we need to take some stuff off your plate. This is just too much for one person. You're chronically overwhelmed. The house is a disaster, and that middle child I told you about, who was ripping books and throwing them, he was like a bull in a china shop. He also had undiagnosed ADHD and autism, and I didn't know it because I had this tunnel vision. I was hyper focused on my oldest and not failing. And so in that moment when my husband was like, something has to change, and he said, our middle child needs you more than anybody, I was like, you're right. I've been so focused on all my vision and trying to, muscle my way into something that I've been ignoring my child's neurodivergence and mine. I mean, what in the moment I thought, okay, I got to figure out what's up with my toddler, because this is not this typical toddler behavior. And why can't I keep my house clean? Why can't, just the organization in general? I was like, this has gotten to a point where this is unlivable. And so I went to my computer and I'm Googling, what's wrong with me? Is there something? I concluded that something must be wrong with my brain, because I was Googling brain broken. What do you do if your brain is broken? It was me. It was obviously me, that I couldn't plan and follow through and organize things. And it was just an unreal level of chaos. And so I think that put me in motion to seek out, why did I feel so passionately that my son needed to be homeschooled, which led me to thinking, well, maybe he learns differently than other people, and what could that be about? And then as I'm reading about, okay, is he twice exceptional? Is he autistic? Is he what is he? Then I realized I'm the same as he is. What? You know? So that's what led me to a diagnosis for myself, you know, and for two of my kids.
So what do you notice are, I know there's a wide spectrum, literally, of ADHD presentation, but what do you notice for yourself that interferes with your homeschool mom life?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I like the way you put it because, as you said earlier, like, oh, well, every homeschool mom struggles to get out the door in the morning. And, oh, I don't think I have ADHD, but maybe, you know, and a lot of people do wonder, like, is this ADHD or is this just burnout? Is this just overwhelm? Is this just being a mom in this century when there's this huge push for really proactive, involved parenting at the same time as like no social
No,
support or
no.
financial
And then you've got
support?
me telling you should also find your quiet time.
Right, right. Right.
You
And
know,
you know how important that is, right? We know,
it is
like,
important.
I love the name of your Instagram account. It's Homeschool Mama Self Care. Like, I learned that the hard way. I burnt myself
Mm,
out because I would
me
not
too.
prioritize
Yeah.
myself. I thought that everybody would suffer if I did, right? And I
I,
had to
your
learn.
your story, the way you describe it, even with math, is the reason I actually have a book that I wrote. I say in the fruit orchard where the chickens free range, but I did that in 2018, 2019. And I say I was writing it for other homeschool moms that were needing to take care of themselves or overwhelmed, because that's my common experience at that time was, and now I see, no, I was writing it to myself too. You know, these are all things that I already learned, of course, but you reinforce it when you write,
Oh
obviously.
yeah. I think so many of us are wounded healers and we're writing the thing. Even sometimes I'll go back in my Instagram account from a couple of years ago and I'll be like, whoa, that was really good advice.
I
Thank
knew
you.
that.
Thank you, past me. I forgot that, you know.
Yeah.
But I do think a lot of women are wondering if they have ADHD,
Yeah.
and it is different for every person.
Mhm.
And what even is it, right? I mean, we talk about it like we know what it is, but a lot of times we confuse the thing for the manifestation or the symptoms of the thing, right? ADHD itself is a neurological disorder. It's very complex. It has to do with low dopamine and norepinephrine levels in the brain, and it has to do with reduced, you know, brain activity in the prefrontal cortex, which is where our executive functioning lives, right? And so we know that it is a lifelong thing. You can't cure it. You know, there's a debate about, okay, is, you know, when did it have to happen early in childhood? Is it a lifelong thing? Is this something you can develop? And then is it a superpower? Is it a disease? You know, like there's a lot of, and we have this interesting movement happening in the neurodivergent, you know, online conversation where we're moving from a pathologizing way of talking about ADHD to like an identity way of talking about it. I'm an ADHDer, right? And this is just who I am. This is how I am, and I deserve to be accepted, right? And almost like, you know, like I identify this way. This is my community. This is a part of me. This isn't a
Mhm.
problem, right? I don't need to adjust. The world needs to adjust. And I think, you know, maybe there's some element of truth in both sides,
Agreed.
because
Yeah.
what you originally asked me, like my tangent there, my ADHD tangent, you asked, how does ADHD show up for me? And how does it impact my life? And that's how you know, is something a disorder, right? We all have tendencies and we all struggle with certain things. Oh yeah, everybody forgets things sometimes, but look at the level that it inhibits your daily
Yeah.
functioning.
Mhm.
You know, that's what we look at. And when you get to a point where you're like, I can't function anymore, that's when you go and get help. That's when you get an evaluation. That's when you say, hey, maybe this is more than just, you know, stress.
Yeah. Is it
Yeah.
too personal for me? Because you can say no. I'm
No.
totally that. But it's personal for you to give like scenarios where you see your expression of being in that state, I guess, or not in a state, but as you said in a live yesterday, sometimes you are fine for a few weeks and then sometimes it's 1 minute. And so when you're in that space where you're like, oh, okay, something is not functioning as it should, what do I see on the outside, or what do you see, or what would someone see, even though nobody's going to be your fly on the wall, but you know.
Yeah, you would see tremendous amounts of clutter,
Yeah.
just tremendous. You would see 3 dozen unfinished projects. With, you would see like even if you go in my storage room and you pull out a box, it's not labeled, or if it is, it's labeled with something else that I used that box for a long time ago. But when you actually open the box, there could be like a dirty diaper and $100 bill and a birth certificate and tax returns from 20 years ago all in the same box.
Yeah.
Okay. Like, and that's because our brains, like, it's like our brains don't have containers and ways to organize things. And so that's manifested in the physical environment. So you walk into an ADHD person's house that's really cluttered, and where's, you can't tell up from down, and you can't sense like a priority. Like, what are you focusing on right now? Because there's just stuff everywhere. It's like, yeah, that's what the inside of my head is like all the time. So it makes sense that I would generate a physical environment that looks like that too.
Have you ever done a deep dive on how Enneagram types and ADHD coincide? Or
I haven't.
Yeah,
that's really interesting. I have a friend who's an Enneagram coach, and I should ask her about that. But yeah, I haven't dove deep into the Enneagram, so I don't know. Yeah, and it is hard to know how much of this is just my personality, how much of this is my disorder, how much of this is my Enneagram type or whatever.
No, because I think, there's been a giant surge of ADHD over the last few years. It's hard not to wonder. This is completely correlative on my part. There's nothing to prove what I'm saying here, and not by research anyways, but the pandemic, so many stresses in the last few years. Is there a trauma-based element of it? And obviously, is there a screen-based element of it? Or what is compelling?
Yes. And there are people who think that ADHD is a trauma response.
Yeah.
There are people who think ADHD is caused by screens.
Yeah.
There are people who vehemently disagree with those.
Yeah.
And you can find medical professionals in both camps. Like, it's really hard to try to figure it out, because for every professional that tells you it's like this, you can find another one that says, no, it's like that, and it can be really disorienting, but yeah, the struggles are, and it's a disorder that involves doing. How do you do a thing? It's not that we don't know what we're supposed to do. It's that we don't know, like, how do you follow through? How do you do a thing? Like, and neurotypical people will tell neurodivergent people, oh, you just do whatever. And it's like, well, yeah, that's where I'm stuck. I don't know how to do a thing. And so what's interesting is the biggest things that I was seeing in my own life were really intense, volatile emotions, like just feeling completely consumed by my emotions, and really reactive, like really reactive, right? I saw, the disorganization and inability to follow through. I was chronically late, just like no concept of time. And no matter how hard I tried, I kept making the same mistakes over and over. It's like, I don't know. And it's really infuriating. You get really infuriated with yourself, and you're told, a lot of us grew up. I got diagnosed at age 35, 36.
Yeah.
I wasn't
that. You look 35. How is that possible?
I wasn't that rowdy boy in the back of the class kicking somebody's chair, right? I was the daydreamer, and I got good grades, and I faked it. I would write papers and get a B+ on a book that I didn't read, because and I was an English major. And as soon as you assign me a book, my brain will read everything except for that book. It's like I'm allergic to what I'm supposed to do. That's basically what ADHD is. It's infuriating. And then everybody's infuriated with you because they think you don't care. Because if you don't show up on time, oh, that's disrespectful, right? That's not being courteous. If you don't follow through on a promise, then you're not trustworthy, right? If you're sitting on the couch, you're lazy, right? And so what they don't realize is you're sitting on the couch either hyper-focused or berating yourself and wondering why you can't get up, right? Yeah. And so I think the research says something like, by the time a child with ADHD is 12 years old, they have received 20,000 more negative messages about themselves than a neurotypical child.
Yeah.
So you grow up with just this huge shroud of shame. So, which makes it even harder to
Yeah.
function,
Oh, that's
right?
actually my next question is then, because I'm hearing that there's this negative messaging, but it's not just coming from others, it's coming from you. So how do you, like, one of the things that I focus on is self-compassion, and it's also built out of my own experience. I have a lot of trauma in my background, like a lot. And then I could go in so many different directions, but the self-compassion, how do you actually, or do you use certain tools in order to speak to yourself or to do something for you, almost like nurturing the nurturer? What do you do in order to counteract some of that stuff?
Yeah. That's huge. That's huge. And that's really step one for a lot of my coaching clients. You know, I went to the life coach school because my life wasn't working. And I found a life coach because I had anxiety and I was homeschooling and I didn't know what to do. Right. And what was amazing, I felt so transformed by my experience working with a life coach that I was like, I'm going to go learn how to teach this stuff and guide people through this. And I'm going to bring this to the homeschool community because nobody needs this stuff like a homeschool mom needs this stuff, right? And what are the things you learn at the life coach school, right? You learn about how to become aware of your stories, aware of your thinking, and how to leverage it, how to have some say in all of those sentences running through your brains, how to question it and not automatically believe everything that you think, right? Figure out, where did that come from? Is it even true? Is it useful to me now? Right? So learning how to look at your own thinking objectively is one kind of leg of the life coaching world, right? And then the next one is, what do you do with emotion? How do you process it instead of staying stuck in it or avoiding it or reacting to it, right? And then the third leg is action. It's executive functioning. It's, how do I plan and follow through? How do I manage time, right? Everything that I was thirsty for as someone with undiagnosed ADHD. And so I found life coaching before I even knew I had ADHD. And even though it wasn't marketed as something that would help someone with ADHD, it was exactly what I needed.
This story, or your story, really coincides with the podcast episode I released today on the mother wound. Are you familiar with that concept of the mother wound? Because there's so many layers of healing that we need to do, and they all help buoy us. And maybe we have different stories and different reasons for having challenges. But yeah, when you're speaking to that, I was 2004 when I started my awareness journey, let's call it that. Aware that, whoa, I got some big stuff that I've got to deal with. And one of the biggest moments was when I was in a live seminar with Dr. Amen. I don't know if you know Daniel Amen. And when he said the words, I thought they were his, they aren't. But he said, what's your thought? Is your thought true? And of course, we all say, of course, why would we be thinking it? But actually, no, it's not always true. And so are you 100% certain it's true? You know that your thoughts aren't always true, because if anyone is partnered or has a best friend that doesn't think exactly like them, which is probably all of us, then you know that other people have different thoughts and they see things differently, different perspective. And so then his next question was, if there is a possibility that you have an alternate thought that could possibly be true, then what would it be like living under that thought? And that moment was huge for my, I don't know, my self-awareness journey or my healing journey, because I could see that I've been believing all sorts of things about myself, whether they came from, the childhood stuff or many possible other things along the way. And I bought into it, and I agreed that some of those things were true. And because I agreed that some of those things were true, I was acting like they were true. And it was very self-sabotaging until I started, questioning it. So yeah, I identify exactly with what you speak to.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I think that self-compassion, so step one, right, is to become aware of the sentences in your brain, right? We're meaning-making machines, right? Things happen in the world, in our lives, and then we make it mean something. And then that sets in motion this chain reaction of, well, okay, if I believe this, then whoa, right, then I have an emotional response to that. And then I take action based on my feelings.
Mm-hmm.
Emotions are fuel for our actions. And so then, then that gets me a result in my life. And so if I don't like my results in my life, I have to not just ask, okay, well, what do I need to do differently? But also, how do I need to feel differently? And what do I need to believe differently in order to do differently? And I think a lot of coaches stop at the action. They just talk about strategy. But when you have ADHD and you are so stuck in your loops, in your beliefs, you've been extra conditioned, extra shamed, extra traumatized, and you have so much proof to support those beliefs. You have so much evidence. Yeah, look at my messy house. Look at all the times I was late and all the people I disappointed, all the things that I said I would do and I didn't do. Then that really erodes your self-concept.
Yes.
And so, how do we build that up? We got to become aware of it. And then we got to accept that, like, yeah, of course it makes sense that you would think that because it was planted in your brain when you were young by this person or whatever. You have evidence, right? But then to have compassion for it, that's where a lot of my clients get stuck because they think, well, I can't have compassion for my behaviors that are unacceptable or for these beliefs that are so true. If I can't let myself off the hook. And so they keep shaming themselves. And they find it really hard to access self-compassion, but self-compassion is the gateway to change because you will not change. If you are shaming, you just hide.
Yeah. Really it as acceptance is the first thing.
Yeah.
I mean, we're coming from the perspective, I am chatting with people all the time that I've long since let go of the notion that I will come across the one homeschool mom that has it all together. She don't exist. Because we are not perfect. Nobody's perfect. No person is perfect. And I mean, I understand that you'd get a lot of shaming messages or you get a lot of negative messages for your behaviors and the outward stuff that maybe the rest of us don't have as much. And also, you don't have to have very much shaming message to get convinced that you're not doing something enough or you're not good enough and you need to be perfect to be acceptable. And so whatever messages we have, we do need to actually go to the root of, this is how I see it. I mean, this is very much a big picture discussion, but I see it as you were placed here for a reason. So if you were, and you're not perfect, and no one else is either, then what should you be doing? Instead of focusing on the things you can't do well, or focusing on the things that you're, unusually not as capable to, or at least it appears so according to other people's version of that, then how do you instead shift your focus to the things that you do really well and invest your time doing, like your Enneagram 4 creative stuff, because I'm pretty sure you have to have a lot of that. Your reels show that for sure, but that you have that creativity and you need to actually allow that spark to grow and just keep investing time in that thing. And it's okay if the house is a mess, which, by the way, everybody, it is okay that the house is a mess. And if I moved that screen and showed you what's over there, you'd be like, oh, she means that.
Yeah. Absolutely. And you talk about shifting focus, right? Which is like a triggering word for someone with ADHD because it's like, because what are the messages we're told about ADHD? Oh, you can't focus, right? Like once you do get a diagnosis, not all of the information that you get about ADHD is helpful or even true, right? It doesn't mean you can't focus. It doesn't mean you don't have any executive functioning or access to that, right? And so sometimes with my clients I started out just as a life coach and I was like, I'm gonna help homeschool moms. Yeah. Because so often they think that there's like a curriculum or a schedule that's going to be the solution when it's not a homeschool solution. It's actually a life coaching issue, right? It's a thoughts, feelings, and behaviors kind of thing. But like 90% of my clients were like, I think I have ADHD. And I was like, what is this? Like, so obviously I'm attracting people like me and and why are they whispering it? And why are there so many of them? Yeah. So I started speaking openly about my ADHD and boy, did that help me like dial in my niche, because everybody, my clients were feeling like, okay, they don't fit in public school. They're not a public school mom, but they don't fit in as homeschool moms either because all the advice from homeschool moms is about curriculum and routine and structure and all these things that we're like, we don't know how to do that. Are we not allowed to homeschool either? You know, but so a lot of the work that I do with clients is first massaging the shame, right? And the tools for that, you ask for what tools do I use? Life coaching is a huge tool that helps you release shame, because when you are able to say what's really true to someone who does not have a bias about, you know, like what you do, everybody else has an opinion. Your husband, your mother-in-law, your kid, everybody else thinks you should do something a certain way. Your life coach doesn't. Like, I don't care if you homeschool or not. I just care that you like what you're doing, right? Exactly. And so when you can speak the scary stuff to an empathetic witness who does not shame you for it, that establishes safety in your body. Whoa, it's safe to be me. It's safe to tell the truth. That's the first step in unwinding shame. I also certified as a hypnotherapist, because sometimes we have these affirmations that we want to believe, but we can't make ourselves believe them. And so by bypassing that critical faculty and getting really relaxed and safe, and, you know, you kind of open yourself up to your subconscious beliefs and put in on purpose the ones that are true, that serve you better. That's another tool that I have used. And then I also think somatic therapy is huge. I'm a huge fan of NARM, the neuroaffective relational model, which is sort of a blend of this top-down, bottom-up approach to healing from shame. You know? So that's huge
for me. Was the Brené Brown, some TEDx talk. I kid you not. The story you described in the morning, or with the math and your oldest and all of that, it's not exactly the same, but I can see it for myself. And then I had a friend who was available to me at the time, and she said, you need to check out this Brené Brown YouTube TEDx talk. And I'm like, all right. Watched it, and there's something I still don't know what to this day I connected with, but there was something in it that compelled me to say, who am I? I don't even know who I am. What is she talking about? I don't know who I am. I know I have needs. I'm not dealing with any of my needs. And I just want everything to be perfect in my world. I want the kids to just go along with what I want and to love what I'm doing and what I've given them, and also to work together, not to be argumentative or anything. And I can remember just watching that video and realizing that I didn't have a sense of myself. And that was part of the problem, is that I didn't see myself in my life, and I wasn't honoring who I was at core. So it's interesting you bring up Brené Brown, because she was also a big part of my story.
Yeah. And I think what I'm really resonating with what you say about not even seeing yourself in your own life. You know, we get so caught up in doing it right, doing motherhood right, not failing our kids, that we erase ourselves and our own needs until we have nothing left to give. And then, you know, and then people feel like failures. Oh, I failed. I have to send my kids to school. No, you didn't. And no, you don't. But you can if you want to, or you need to. And that doesn't mean you failed, right? Meeting your family's needs is never failing. And we have to be flexible and imaginative about what that can look like. And that's one thing that people with ADHD really have going for them, is rich, powerful imaginations. And I think we use it against ourselves. We're imagining our future is going to be as horrible as our past, and we're imagining all of our failures. We have rejection sensitivity dysphoria, and we're more, you know, just like our negative, distorted thoughts about ourselves are really amplified. And so it's really easy to just see all the ways we're failing and completely miss the amazing things that we have done, that we are doing, that we will do, you know. So one of the things I learned how to do in life coaching and in hypnotherapy and in mindfulness and, you know, in somatic work is use my imagination in a way that serves me. It's obviously powerful. It obviously makes me feel a certain way. When I imagine something, I tend to create it, right? I tend to feel that way. I tend to take steps toward making that come true. And that's just brains doing what brains do. And so if you can hack that and say, hey, I'm going to imagine something more useful and actually consider the possibility that it could be true, and explore there and widen in that space, then your life gets so much bigger. You start seeing options you didn't know you had. And it's like, what have you got to lose by imagining something better?
Yeah.
You're
That's interesting.
already disappointed. You know, you might, it's like, go for it, just try, and that's another thing that I think is so great about life coaching, is that life coaches ask people new kinds of questions that get their imaginations going in new directions, and then they can start to envision
It's like
future.
the most fun job
It's
ever,
so
people.
fun.
Yeah, it really is. Somebody was saying this morning that might be here. So, but was saying, I just got so excited after and I'm like, yeah, it's the helper's high.
Oh
That's,
yeah, it's
oh,
for
yeah,
sure.
that's
Yeah.
an ability. But, we are talking about a lot of things that I feel like don't get discussed often enough in the homeschool community. Somehow we have this idea that we should be able to do everything more than just more than the mom world. We're taking on all these things in an educational approach, but it becomes so much more than just our children's education. And I just say, it's fine. You can ignore your needs. You can ignore you when you have just figured out how to not be a human being that has needs because until that point you have needs and you can't pretend that you don't have needs. This self-care word actually is so triggering for people. People instinctively think that means selfish, and I go, that's fine, you can be selfish, but you don't have to be selfish, but you do have to be acknowledging your humanity, and you're a human doing this homeschool thing. You're not a superhuman. You really have needs. And just like you're saying, you're going to burn out. Of course you are, because you can't keep going. It's not reality. You've mentioned so many different therapies or modalities. And so I'm curious, when are you going to have your ayahuasca ceremony for homeschool moms? Take it way out
I
there.
just I think women are so
Yeah.
powerful, and I think that we're homesick for our own voices. And what I love, the biggest honor that I feel, and there are many, from being a life coach, is I am often the first person to hear a woman's true voice.
Yes.
She feels safe enough to say what she has never been able to say to her partner, or to her friends, or to her in-laws, or to her therapist even, or to herself, because it feels so dangerous to want when you're a woman and you're a mother. And it's not. It's empowering and freeing, and wanting is good.
Amen.
We want good things. And when we can start to say it out loud, and it's usually this tentative little whisper of a dream,
Yeah.
but like when your life coach takes you seriously and it's like, oh yeah, and tell me more about that dream, instead of like dismissing it as, oh, that'll never
Yeah.
happen, then it takes you into this new place, and you start to learn what your voice is and who you are, because you start using it. And the beautiful thing that I have found, now my homeschool has taken a different form once I started using my voice, right? Once I started saying what I want, what I need, what I feel, what I think, that made some waves, in my family, when everybody was used to me not having any wants and needs and voice, right? And I say, make the waves, let people adjust to that, let them see you as a human being, and let them pick up some slack, right? So I stopped doing it all. I started delegating, which was the hardest hurdle for me
Yeah.
to jump. I had to get humble enough to think, because again, not only do I have ADHD, but I have ADHD and autism and anxiety and, other things going on, sensory processing disorder with my kids. And that's sometimes, all the time, it's too much for one person.
Right.
I am not meant to meet 100% of my kids' needs 100% of the time.
That's right.
And so I had to build in support. And we look around like, where's this village? We have to make it. We pay for it in different ways, right? Or we create it. And so, I still, right now, I am homeschooling 2.5 of my kids. In the technical sense, right? I have 2 kids that are enrolled at a charter school, 2 kids that are home full-time, and 1 that's part-time.
Yeah.
And I'm willing to let every homeschool year reinvent itself. And sometimes I'm homeschooling all 5. Sometimes I have to send everybody but the baby. So you know what I mean? And it's not all or nothing. And that's something I want homeschool moms with ADHD to know. It's not all or nothing. Also, you don't have to be perfectly healed to homeschool. Also, even people without ADHD
Exactly.
yell at their kids
Yeah.
and lose the
Yeah.
math homework and whatever. And it's okay. It's okay to let people in and let other adults love your kids
Yeah.
so that you can have some time, and you'll find that in different places at, at different price points for different reasons, like I've had times where I took my kids, gosh, the first time I burnt out twice.
Yeah.
And the first time I burnt out, I found a little hole in the wall Montessori homeschool support place. It was in somebody's home. She was this fantastic woman. She was homeschooling her kids and she was Montessori certified. She was a lawyer. Like, she was amazing. And she wanted to help some homeschoolers. I'm like, yes. Right. So I sent my 3 boys to her, and then my baby would be asleep in the car, and I would go eat takeout, or I would cry, or I would sleep, or I would have a therapy session, while I was meeting some of my own needs. And burnout does not last forever. And it's okay to outsource one or all academic subjects while you're healing, but healing is the cyclical thing. It's not something that's like, check, I'm healed.
No.
So waiting to be perfectly healed for you to homeschool. That's not true for anyone, whether they have ADHD or not.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead and love on your kids. However you're healthiest and happiest is the right setup for you.
Yeah. Yeah, there's so many different dynamics we could speak to. When you were speaking about delegating, I see that as a source of boundaries, like creating boundaries. And maybe it's an internal boundary where you're like, okay, that's enough. I'm not self-sufficient. I need to help, or I need to delegate. But I see the opposite of boundaries as a really clear identity, a really clear sense of who you are. And that rises, and people aren't always comfortable with you being fully you, because that's not how they've been functioning with you for whatever reason, and whatever family dynamic or friend circle you're in. But when you begin to delegate or create boundaries, then in the opposite, you also, you discover you become more you, as you insist, this isn't me, or this isn't how I relate. And that in itself is earthquaking, but it is also very satisfying, like internally satisfying. And I see it as identity getting clear means you get clear on your purpose. And then when I use clear, it doesn't have to mean clear as in faultless and it's always going to stay this way and I'm going to be consistent every day. It just means you're just moving a little bit that way. And that would be relevant whether you are in your scenario or in any scenario. Your focus is just a little bit more. Should I not use the word focus? Is that what I've heard? I'll ponder that. We have so many possible things we could discuss, but my workshop is actually starting in 2 minutes. And that I lost time with you just now.
I pull people into my ADHD vortex, right? We get hyper focusing and vibing, and that's like, what time? Oh, okay, whatever.
Listening right now, he's like, well, maybe you do have ADHD. I am very present with people to the point where I am unaware of the time too. I don't think I am, but I'm really present too. Well, it was a pleasure to be in your ADHD vortex.
Thank you. It was lovely to meet you, and I love the work you're doing. Go manage your own time so you can teach other people to manage theirs.
So lovely to meet you, Emily. And if anybody has any thoughts or comments, throw them in the section or comment section down below. And you'll also see this on YouTube later. So yes, thank you for being here.
Thank you. See you later, Teresa.
Bye, everybody.